Good morning and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's session with Lucy Barylak. She's one of our, she presents quite frequently, so we're so glad she's with us this morning. This morning, Lucy's going to be talking about dementia and inappropriate sexual behavior. So it's going to be a little bit of a sensitive topic this morning, but it'll be very good. And hopefully everybody that's on the session with us today will join in that conversation. So before Lucy gets started, let me tell you a little bit about her if you are not familiar with Lucy. Lucy Barylak has a master's degree in social work from McGill University. She is presently working as a consultant for a health network in Montreal, Canada. She has been involved in various research projects and has published numerous articles related to caregiving issues. She has lectured at several universities and colleges on innovative approaches to caregiving, and she presents annually at international and national conferences. Lucy is also a consultant for private industry in the United States, including her work with the WellMed Charitable Foundation and clinics in Texas. And she would also like you to know that she was a caregiver for her mother for about 10 years. So she has experience. Lucy, welcome to the call this morning.
Okay, thank you so much, Glenda and Minerva, and good morning, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that our session today is a 1-hour session, but I will continue for an extra half hour. We were going to shut down the recording. And if you have any more personal questions that you want to ask, you can you don't have to show your name and everything will be confidential. So thank you so much. And you're right, Glenda, for some people, our topic is a very difficult one to discuss, because it touches on our values, our culture, our religion, and how we ourselves feel about sex, especially as we age, and especially when the person who we are caring for with dementia exhibits inappropriate sexual behavior. How does one deal with this situation? I do want to tell you that in my practice and in research, a lot of caregivers feel embarrassed to discuss this matter and feel very much alone. So I would like to share some of the questions that I received, and maybe you can relate to them as well. So let me start with the first one. It says, "Dear Lucy, it is so embarrassing to be asking this question. My husband and I have been married for over 50 years. We had a very close relationship. My husband was the pastor at our church until his retirement. He's been diagnosed with dementia for the past 5 years, and I'm his caregiver. He manages fairly well with most of his daily activities. However, lately he's been behaving very differently. My husband never said a bad word in his life, but lately he has started to swear and accuses me of having extramarital affairs. I'm beside myself. I don't know what to do or say. This is becoming very stressful, and I'm too embarrassed to speak with my children or anyone else about what is going on." And she signed it, "Help, Helen." Let me share another one with you. My parents are both in their 80s and live on their own. My father has dementia, and my mother is his full-time caregiver. 2 of my siblings live out of town. I visit my parents a few times a week, shop and do the laundry for them. My father and I had always had a very close relationship, and he used to call me his princess. Lately, I find him to be more forgetful and not himself. My last visit was very traumatic for me. I was helping Dad out of his chair when he stood up. He grabbed me and started to kiss me, but not like a father kisses his daughter. I was so taken aback that I left as soon as possible and never told my mother what took place. What should I do? Did I do something wrong? Thank you for listening and hope to hear from you soon." And she signed it, Carolina. And the last one that I want to share with you, it says, "Hello, I'm not sure how to start. My wife and I decided to have my mother live with us after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She's been living with us for the past 2 years, and my children really like having her with us. The problem is that a few months ago, she started taking off her clothes at different times of the day and became very agitated when she's told not to do it. This is so embarrassing to me, especially when the kids start laughing. What's going on? I have no one to talk to. And he signed it, Carlos. So I want to thank the three of you for sending these questions. I think it's a good representation of what it means when I talk about inappropriate sexual behavior. It has a lot to do with all of these scenarios. So next slide, please. So what I want to talk about today is what I'm going to be discussing is what is inappropriate sexual behavior in dementia? Why does this behavior happen? I think it's important to understand it, especially when these were not things that were a normal behavior of that person. And I think one of the biggest one is what could trigger this behavior? If you have a better understanding of that, I think there's a better way of handling it and how to handle this inappropriate sexual behavior. And then hopefully we'll talk about tips on how to deal with difficult sexual behaviors. But for this particular session, I'm really going to ask you quite a few times if you have any questions. And if you don't, it's okay too. It's just something because I want to make sure that I'm clear and that there's full understanding what I mean about that. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I do want to emphasize that the need for close human contact does not decline with age or dementia. Those with dementia, and this is important, communicate with behavior rather than speech. It's important to keep that in mind. The basic need to be, to belong, to be desired, to share, does not end with dementia. Sexuality and intimacy are a fundamental part of human existence. Even though in our society, a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about sex, especially in regards to seniors. It's a bit ageist, but it does, there is that sense. However, keeping in mind that many seniors continue to have very meaningful sexual relationship throughout their lives, and this is very healthy. Today, I will only address the inappropriate sexual behavior that some people with dementia display. Now, I don't want you to think that just because someone has dementia, that this is going to happen. No, but there's a lot of research that does identify it. And it's very important for caregivers to first acknowledge that it could happen. And if it does happen, to really have a really good idea of why it's happening, what's going on here. So I do want to say that inappropriate sexual behavior is disturbing. Okay, there's no doubt about it. It can happen when someone has Alzheimer's or dementia or not. It can be one of the most challenging behaviors to handle for caregivers because it often makes family members, caregivers, and friends, or even strangers feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, frightened, and angry. And I can certainly understand why. I am very sympathetic with what many are going through. But I do want to say for people who are not comfortable talking about sex, this whole issue can be even more overwhelming. So I think you need to kind of understand who you are and how you approach this whole subject. So if you are one of them, it's okay, but try to be open to the idea that sex and intimacy is very normal throughout our lives. For couples who have had a good sexual relationship, the fact that your spouse or partner becomes aggressive or insists on more physical contact can be very disturbing. And it's difficult to manage, and it can really become very, very overwhelming. The same goes for adult children caring for the parents. For example, the daughter who said she was shocked by the behavior of her father at that point. Could be a sister, could be a brother, or any other family member or friend that you're caring for. So I want to talk about what is inappropriate sexual behavior. And if we can go to slide 4, I would appreciate that, to the next one. So let's look at this. So what does inappropriate sexual behavior look like when people exhibit these behaviors in public or when other people are around? So I'm emphasizing that because it's important to keep that in mind. So sexual advances towards others, as long as it's that the behavior isn't in public or the person does not want that to happen. Now, we're also talking about masturbating or fondling genitals. I mean, masturbating is normal, but it's not. It's a problem if it's done in public or around other people. The same goes with swearing. For some people, they've never exhibited that. And all of a sudden they're doing that and they're becoming very explicit in the commands and what they want. Now, removing one's clothes, we all remove one's clothes, but removing your clothes in public or when other people are around, very much what happened with the mother who was staying with the family. It was becoming an issue. Exposing self in public or at home when others are present. So before we move on, I really would like to ask, if people have a question about this, and that it's clear to you that these sexual inappropriate behaviors, that's what research looks at. But when they look at it, it's only when it's done in a public area or with other people around. Otherwise, and I'm going to say it again, masturbating or touching yourself is totally normal if you're doing it in your own private home, in your own private room. The same goes with removing clothes. So let's open it up a little bit if somebody does have a question, just to clarify that.
Right. So you can just unmute your microphone. You can use the raise hand feature if you'd like to. The chat box will remain open throughout the call. So feel free to use that also.
Okay, so as long as it's clear, then we can move forward. But keep those thoughts if you don't want to talk about it right now. As I said, we'll have an opportunity later on. So I do want to put a lot of emphasis of what causes sexual inappropriate behavior in people with dementia. So if we can go to the next slide, please. It might seem strange that someone who once knew was proper or respectful, and even if they weren't, let's say they did swear, whatever, might suddenly be showing sexual inappropriate behavior. The most important thing to understand is that this behavior is caused by damage to their brain. It's there. All the research tells us. It's not something they're doing on purpose. Dementia affects part of the brain that controls a person's ability to control their own responses. So really, they are not responsible for what they're doing. And even if they're showing these kind of behaviors, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's sexual in nature at all. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more to really take a look at what it is, what triggers it. That's why it's important to learn how to distract and redirect them to a more appropriate activity. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that as we go along, so that you recognize that you do have some control over it. So a person with dementia could act in sexually inappropriate ways towards their spouse, their partner, their children, even paid professional caregivers or strangers, even the doctor or the nurse. They are likely, to be confused about who a person is, or might have forgotten that they already have a spouse or a partner. They may become angry or upset if they feel rejected. So the whole idea behind it, when we talk about dementia, we always say, keep in mind, remember that it's the disease that's making you behave that way, okay? It can be caused by a need to feel intimacy again. Maybe they're kind of feeling lonely, needing comfort. It could be as simple as that, or it could be as simple as being bored. And I'll talk about that. This could be caused by their disorientation, not knowing that they're not in a private place. They might not even be aware of it. Or they can become, just not used to the idea. They might not even recognize the person that they're with. The other thing that I really want you to also to take into consideration, that certain medication can also boost someone's sex drive or cause aggressive behavior. It's a known fact. So please remember that if a loved one all of a sudden starts behaving inappropriately sexually, or in any other way. It doesn't have to be that at all. But all of a sudden they're becoming more aggressive. It is time to call the doctor. Okay, explain to the doctor what is happening. Many caregivers tell me that they are embarrassed, as I said before, to discuss this problem with anyone. But please keep in mind that the behavior may be caused by a certain medication that they're on, or other physical problem that you're not even aware of. They can have a urinary tract infection and they're touching themselves, and you're thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Or they may have a new medical problem and they're having pain, but they don't know how to say it. They don't know how to express that feeling. So obviously they're at themselves, or they're taking off their clothes, or they're whatever it is, or they start swearing and using foul language because something is really, really bothering them at that particular time. As well, the doctor may may want to prescribe some new medication to calm the person down, or reduce a medication that they're on now that is actually really making their behavior more difficult. It's important to ask the doctor about medication that is available for this kind of behavior. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that medication to put them like not to be able to function, but there are medications on the market that kind of takes the edge off a little bit and makes things a little bit easier, primarily for them more than anything, and for you as a caregiver as well. But while you're there, it might be a good opportunity for you to speak to the doctor about what you're going through and the fact that you need support, and ask for a referral for either counseling or support in the community. And we'll talk about all that. There are resources in the community that are definitely available. So before I go any further, as I said, I'm going to stop often and ask you if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions or comments that you would like to share with others.
Well, I see that somebody has dialed in on their phone, so you press *6 on your phone if you would like to join us in the conversation. Otherwise, unmute your microphone or use the raise hand feature. You had mentioned, and I think one of our messages that you got was about when all this is being done in front of children, and you touched on that some. But Patricia had asked that question. Can you address maybe a little bit, Lucy, about what you say to the children at that point in time?
You know what, I will definitely, it's a very timely, because the next slide, if we go to the next
Oh,
it
let me
doesn't
go
talk-
ahead and finish. Let
it's
me
not
finish the thought
exactly.
for Patricia.
I'm
She
sorry.
said, this matter, I want to finish this thought for Patricia. She had
Yes.
put something in the chat box. This matter has been very difficult for me. I know it's not his fault. I sometimes don't know how to handle it. It upsets me because I am a very private person. So that was the rest of Patricia's comment.
100%, and I'm going to definitely respond to you as we go along, because it's part of my whole session today. So first and foremost, I think it's important that if you are comfortable, it is important to explain sexual behavior to family members, friends, and people that you trust and are in your lives. Okay, it might be difficult to do, but there are reasons why I'm saying it. They really need to know that your loved one behavior is caused because of the damage to their brain from the dementia. Because possibly, if they don't understand, they may not want to visit or be angry with the person or embarrassed for you. And the relationship you had with your person or with these individuals could be damaged, and they may avoid you. And it's really important that that they have a good understanding. I want to tell you that, believe me, when people who care for you and your loved one understand what's going on, most people will understand and will be there for you. So keeping secrets is not a very good idea. Now, I'll just touch on how to talk to young kids about that. I think first and foremost, it's important to deal with the behavior right away, and I'm going to give you some tips as we go along. But I think it is important. It's harder to speak to children about what I'm just saying, that you need to tell them about the disease. But it's okay to say that grandpa or whoever that might be is really having a very bad day today. Sometimes we have bad days, and the way they're behaving, it's not really who they are. Short, very short. Do not go into a lot of explanation. We all have, sometimes you don't feel good. Grandpa's not feeling good today. Grandma isn't herself, but they still love you. Short. Yeah, it is very, very difficult, I have to say, but we're going to move on. I think that let's go to slide 7 for a minute. So I think that it's really important before we move into how to handle the difficult behaviors, we really need to look at the triggers. Now, there are triggers, and I talked a little bit about them. Triggers can be that they're not well, that something is going on physically, that they have pain. But there's other triggers as well. It could be, as I said, they could be totally bored, so they don't know what they're doing. They're fidgeting with themselves. They could really be cold or hot. And so I think you need to understand, you need to kind of have a good understanding of what's going on. So if for any reason, if they are hot, you can always help them take off if they're wearing too much, or reduce the heat in the house. You can touch them if they feel cold. Now, again, the pain is a big one because they can't tell you what's going on. Another one is needing to go to the bathroom, and they can't tell you that they need to go to the bathroom. So they're doing all kinds of what you believe are inappropriate behavior, but they don't know how to express themselves. They can also be just tired and need to have a rest, and they could be hungry. And they could also have a day that they're more confused than usual, okay? And again, as I said before, to make an appointment with the doctor. But it's good to have a journal. I used to have a journal not because my mother was displaying this kind of behavior, but I used a journal when her behavior escalated by her agitation, just either verbal or physical. And so it gave me a better idea of when things happen. So for example, if you see that, let's say at 2:00 in the afternoon, it's kind of repeating itself, that they're fidgeting more and whatever, then you can actually do something about it. And you can ask the question, let's go to the bathroom, or offer them a drink. Maybe they're thirsty, maybe they're hungry. So keeping a journal is a good idea. Now, I'm wondering, has anyone who's going through this difficult scenario, have you noticed any triggers that you could have identified that's been going on? I'd love it if you could share that with us.
Linda, did you have a question or a comment? Your microphone is unmuted.
No.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So anyone else, you can unmute your microphone. If you dialed in on your phone today, you can press *6. The chat box is open and you can use that also.
Yeah, triggers are important, and we'll get back to the triggers a little bit later as well. So I've said an awful lot. I try to condense it because it's just an hour session, and to just be able to look at it in a different perspective. First and foremost, the person has dementia. So you know that they're not functioning the way they should. The other thing is really to understand the reason behind it. It's very important. I want to emphasize again, if you feel comfortable, please share with people that you trust. It's important for them to know. And the triggers are also extremely important. So how does a caregiver deal with this behavior? If we can go to the next slide, please. I do want to say that every person responds differently. So to an intervention. So it might work for you, for some people, for others, it might not. But here are a few tips that you can experiment to see which one works for your loved one. So the thing is that these words are important. So when I talk about deflect, distract, and redirect. So it's not just about inappropriate sexual behaviors. It's about any behavior that's difficult to handle. And if you've been on these sessions before, you know that Dr. Sklar and I use this a lot. So what do I mean by deflect? If you're seeing that they're agitated, change the subject. Okay, right away, try to change the subject. Ask them a question. Do whatever it takes. Now, then you distract them. And how do you do that? Many times, I'll share with my own mother, I would take her to another room, okay? Just saying, come, Mom, come with me. Let's go have a cup of coffee. All of a sudden, that agitation and her behavior settled down. I can actually see it. And redirect, I mean, at the same time, try and do an activity with them that you think that they might enjoy. So you're taking them away from what is happening to them at that particular moment. So lots of activities that you know, reminiscing is great. You can watch TV, listen to music. Music is wonderful. My mother loved to sing along with me. You can go for a walk. Laughter is amazing if you can sort of make a little comment just to laugh together, something that you remember, because their attention span is so short that for many people with dementia, deflecting, distracting, and redirecting is an easy way to do. Now, I saw something on the chat.
Right, Tanya had a trigger that she mentioned that, I hadn't thought about. But she says maybe someone getting into their personal space and them taking it the wrong way, getting too close.
100%. Thank you for that. Yes, they might not even, they misinterpret. And maybe that's what happened with the daughter and the mother and the father. He might not even have recognized that she was his daughter. And here she was helping him, picking him up, staying close to him. And so, listen, so he's, he went in to be a little bit closer and started kissing inappropriately. Thank you so much for that. Was there something else? Any other chat? No? Okay. All right. So I just want to give a few examples of what difficult behaviors. So if your loved one takes off their clothes, touches themselves, or masturbates in front of others, this may not mean that they want sex, and we talked about it. It's often a sign that they're uncomfortable or need to use a bathroom. It could also be that they used to, you might have walked around naked or masturbated when they lived alone, and it's only a problem now that they're around other people. So I have to say that if they do behave this way at home, it may be that they want to soothe themselves. If they are not hurting themselves, then try not to pay attention. Please don't shame them, and maybe just to leave them alone. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy to do, but you have to look at the bigger picture. Because some of the things that I'm talking about are normal behaviors for everyday people. So because they are not aware of them. And so you just have to be able to, to stay calm. If they take off their clothes, maybe help them put them back on, and all the things that I was talking about. So we're going to move a little bit forward, but I just want to know again if there's anything that anybody wants to share with us, because I have to say that many times oops, sorry about that. That just went all my little notes went flying, and I'll just put them back on. Okay. Now, if deflecting and distracting or redirecting does not work, so let's look at other tips that we have. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So I do want to talk about, and it's really, really important to stay calm and to be patient. We keep telling caregivers all the time, you got to stay calm, you got to be patient. But in situations like this, with these difficult behaviors, it's one of the most important things to really do. You need to be gently but firmly tell the person that the behavior is inappropriate. So when I say that, you know that person better than I do. So you know how to talk to them in a way that sort of you're still calm, you're still patient, but you're kind of telling them that it is inappropriate. It's also important to match your body language to your words. Think of your tone, your voice, and your facial expression. Now, because they cannot communicate as well as they can, and sometimes some of them can communicate and they can be upsetting and they can get angry. But I think it's important that you really maintain a cool approach. But you really need to maintain consistent, firm boundaries. Don't accidentally encourage inappropriate behavior by sending mixed signals. Again, you can say, no, stop, I don't like that, or stop, that's not right. Don't shame the person. Please don't shame them. Don't argue with them. Watch for nonverbal cues from them. Show empathy. Remember, it's the disease that is affecting their behavior. So I want to open it up again, and I'd like to hear from you. Does any of this make sense? Do you have any tips that you would like to share? And then I'll share some examples of clients that I've dealt with.
We'd love to have you join the conversation.
Okay. I'm going to touch on a subject that's really, really very, very private and hard to deal with. Unfortunately, I've experienced it myself with some caregivers where their spouses or their partners become really aggressive sexually. And to the point where sometimes they feel they have to give in just to keep the peace. Nobody should have to go through that. Nobody should have to, even though if you're aware that they're not doing it on purpose. This is physically abusive. And you have to be I'm going to emphasize that even later. If they do it once, they're going to do it again. So I've had many caregivers who make a lot of excuses. I love him. He didn't mean this. He didn't, it was a mistake. He'll never do it again. But you're not dealing with a rational person. You're not dealing with anyone that can even remember what they did. They might not even remember 5 minutes before. And sometimes their expectations in let's say the middle stages of the dementia, they don't even remember that they want to be cuddled, they want to be loved, they want to have sex. And sex does not mean penetration, it could mean other activities. But you as a person, whether you're a woman or you're a man, you should not be exposed to that. Nobody should have to take that because it is abusive. So I just want to comment on that. And if there is anyone who wants to add a little bit about what I'm saying or talk about it, I'm very open to listen. All right, so let's go to slide 10, because we're going to have lots of time to discuss it. I want to talk a little bit now about just some practical tips, okay? Just a few practicals. So, when people are kind of touching themselves sometimes, and this is all from caregivers, I'm not taking credit from any of this. Sometimes suspenders and overalls may be better choice when someone is trying to take off their clothes or, and just wanting to touch themselves. Now, this second one is really good for any sex, wearing an apron with pockets filled with interesting objects to keep their hands occupied. I did that with my mother, I have to tell you. And she actually really enjoyed that activity because this did not have anything to do with sexual inappropriate behavior. It was just her agitation was so great sometimes that my heart went out to her because she would pace the house and she would be agitated and I couldn't calm her down. But when she wore that apron, and I would put things that I knew she liked to look at. It kept her busy and it kept her preoccupied. So if they become like restless, this is another tip that I received from a caregiver. If they're sitting down, or you can have them sit down, put a pillow under them. I don't know if you've noticed, but people with dementia, they like to touch things. A sense of touching is very, very important. And for some couples who don't sleep together, these body pillows, these very cuddling body pillows, really help the person with dementia to kind of feel that they were connected at night. And obviously, if you're in public, when you should always bring an extra shawl or some sort of a cover up when people are starting to remove their clothes, and then escort them out of the area as soon as possible. So besides these tips, I'm just wondering if anybody else has a tip and would like to share their own experience. We have a very silent group today because this is a very, very difficult topic to talk about. I understand. And that's okay. I'm so glad that you're here with us and we're, talking about it. Let's go to slide 11, please, to the next slide. Now, these are some of the things that could happen. So as I said before, if your loved one becomes angry, pushes you, grabs you, yells, or becomes aggressive once, they will most likely do it again. They may hit, punch, curse, or scream. Again, please don't argue with them. Please don't go near them. Move away from them. Now, these are the worst case scenarios, so I don't want to frighten you, but it's really important to put a plan in place. And what I mean by that, as I said before, if you have some trusted family members or friends that they know what's going on, and they give you permission to call so that you could distract them a little bit, then by all means, do call them. And I have to say that the worst case scenario, if you cannot manage that person at all, because you want to protect them as well, is you might have to call 911. And I see that there's something on the chat.
Right, Tanya had a good idea, talking about an interactive companion pet, if they're at a point they can handle that, yeah.
An interactive what? I missed that, I'm sorry.
Companion pet, a pet.
Oh, yes. Pets are wonderful, yes. It really all depends. I mean, some of you may have cats or dogs or any other animal. My daughter had a lizard for 18 years who was an amazing pet. So whatever pet, there is that connection with pets. And I think that's a really good idea. Thank you for that.
Oh, she's saying the battery operated ones.
Oh my goodness. I never thought about that. And I suppose there must be, right?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That way they don't have to feed them or anything, Tanya. Just replace the batteries every once in a while. Good idea.
I guess it all, anything, what we're talking about right now, and that's very creative, is distracting and redirecting. So if, there are battery operated children's toys, little dogs, I know my children had them when they were young. That's a great idea. As long as you don't frighten them, you can try it out, put it on and start laughing at the little doggy. That's the whole point of this discussion, that you do have some control over it. So when you're distracting someone and redirecting them, you're taking control of a situation that is very difficult to take control of. And not only because it's difficult physically and mentally, but it's just something that is hard to deal with. It's a topic that's very difficult for caregivers and people in general. And I have to tell you, a lot of healthcare workers are too embarrassed to talk about it themselves. I mean, even if the person is going to come in to a doctor, I've had caregivers who tell me, I went and talked to my doctor and you know what he did? I'm embarrassed to say it. He patted me on the back and said, well, at least he still wants to be intimate with you. What kind of an answer is that? Okay. And other healthcare workers, and sometimes it happens in long-term care facilities. where the healthcare workers are embarrassed themselves when they see someone behaving like that. And they don't even really realize, they don't even know how to handle it in many cases. And either they'll laugh at it or, they'll make comments about that. It's a very difficult situation. I think I saw somebody else on the chat.
Yeah, Tanya was explaining a little further. She said, we have joy for all pets that we provide. You can find them on Amazon. They're great, but expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that if you go to a children's, toy store, there are these they're not as, I hope not, if I remember right. But thank you so much for that tip. I have to tell you that we all need support. I'm not sure if you can, there's one more slide. Let's look at that. If there is one, yeah. We all need support at different times in our lives, for sure. You don't need to do this alone. It's very, very important that family and friends can be a great support if you're honest with them and let them know what's going on. And there are resources out in our community. There's individual counseling, there's support groups. If you don't feel, if you don't want to go to a support group, the area agency on aging is in the community. You can always call that. And I have an awful lot of resources in the next slide that you could actually take a look at and see. And also, I'm sure, Glenda, you might have a few suggestions about resources in the United States. I think there's a number to call. Is it 211?
Yeah, if you're trying to find the area agency on aging in your county, your city, they're placed in different places depending on what state you're in. You can always call your local 211 and ask for the area agency on aging, and they should be able to give you the number. If not, you can go to the elder care locator, which we talk about a lot on our sessions, because they are a nationwide information and referral service. And you can reach them toll free at 800-677-1116. Or if you're on the web, and everybody's on the web these days, you can find them at www.eldercare.acl.gov. And I'll put that in the chat box, and we'll also include that information in our follow-up email. And while I'm talking about that, if you register for today's session, you will receive a follow-up email in a few days. And it will include the resources that Lucy has talked about here, and that's on her slide there. And it will also ask you for your feedback on the session. If you enjoyed it, if you got information that was valuable to you. So I would encourage you to take a moment to complete that survey for us. Also, if you have a topic that you would like to hear us present on, we'd love to hear about that too. We show in all of our sessions, we're not the know-all be-all. We get a lot of information from caregivers, and we would like to know if there are topics that we haven't thought of yet that you may have, and it might be important for us to present. So I'd appreciate that also.
So if we can go to
the
last slide, who has a lot of resources as well. And a lot of information that you can actually read on your own. These are all, there's so much information on the web, but these are really good qualified website that you can go to and really get information on the whole issue, and make you realize that you're really not alone in this. It's not your particular person that is behaving like that. I see something else.
Right. Patricia said she lives in Southeast Texas and that resources are pretty limited. And so, Patricia, I would ask, have you been in touch with your area agency on aging in that area? Since I live in Texas, I know that we have many area agencies on aging throughout the state. If not, let me know, put something in the chat box and I'll get you that number. Will you be sharing the slides afterwards, Lucy?
Yes, absolutely. They're already there, and Minerva has them. So by all means, for sure.
Okay. All right. Do we have a moment that I can tell what's coming up on the caregiver
Yes, more
teleconnection?
than a moment. You have plenty of time.
All right. So I always like to tell you what's coming up on the caregiver teleconnection, and Lucy will be coming up again soon. So on Tuesday, April the 18th, we're going to have a session with Barry Jacobs, and I'll be with you back for that one. He's one of our presenters that presents once a quarter. He's going to talk about why caregivers should confront, not avoid, a dementia diagnosis. Boy, this sounds like a really interesting one, Lucy, because we know it's so hard to accept that diagnosis, to even seek it out, should I say. On the 19th, Lucy will be back with Dr. Elliott Montgomery Scar, and this will be the next in their Our Health is Our Wealth, a health promotion series for caregivers. And this is a series they've been doing this month. And on the 19th at 10 o'clock, they'll be talking about mental health issues. So I would encourage you to join them for that. And then on the 20th, Dr. Natalie Oliver, another one of our frequent presenters who we so enjoy, at noon on Thursday, April the 20th, and I'll be back with you on that one. Dementia and ambiguous loss. That one is not so self-explanatory, so let me read to you a little bit what it says. That there are many types of losses that those age 65 and over experience, and they are not all related to death. And so she's going to share ideas and a conversation about ambiguous loss and what it means and how we can cope with it. Let's see what we have here in our chat box. Minerva explained a little bit to you about the half hour that's coming up next. Patricia, she's so grateful to this place, and I have to agree with you. I'm grateful too, Patricia. Even though I'm working, I'm learning so much and connecting with caregivers, which is, in my heart. So I'm so happy for that. So we do have another half hour coming up with Lucy. I will not be with you during that time, but I will be stopping I'm thinking I'm going to be stopping it, but I don't see it right now. The the audio may already be off. Let me look. No, it says it's recording. Okay, great. So Lucy, I don't believe in holding people over, so you can start your half hour. That's right. And so if you were uncomfortable sharing during the time that we were recording, that will not be a worry to you in the next half hour. But I do want to say it's been my pleasure to be with Lucy as always, and with each one of you. And I look forward to seeing you on future sessions. So let me stop the recording and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much, Glenda. It's a pleasure working.
Bye-bye.
Bye, dear.